Online dating apps, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Plenty of Fish, OkCupid, Instagram in some ways, and a bunch of others. All of these apps are atrocious. That's right, atrocious. For average to below average guys, they hardly get any matches, waste their time, money, and destroy their self-esteem in the process. But we already know about these things. We already know how bad dating apps are for the bottom 90% of guys. What you might not know, however, is how these apps affect dating in ways you don't even think of. So, without this video being a repeat of the obvious that you've already heard a million times on other channels, today I'm going to be covering in depth the broader and lesser known implications these apps have on dating. You'll be shocked by just how much damage these platforms are causing. And lastly, this is true whether you use the apps or not, whether you're a man or woman, and even whether you're a Chad or non-Chad. No matter which side you fall of these three groups, in many ways you will be worse off compared to if these platforms never existed in the first place. So, without wasting any more time on the intro, let's get started with the obvious. How destructive these apps are for average to below average guys, who, in my opinion, are the hardest hit. It's no question the main issue facing average to below average guys is quantity. Here are some figures for you. If you're in the bottom 80%, you're competing on average with 12 other guys for every match. And if you're in the bottom 50%, that number jumps up to 30. This stems from two factors. One, there are more men than women on these apps. To be exact, it's 3-1 on Tinder, 2-1 on Bumble. And two, men like half of all the profiles they see, while women on the other hand like an abysmally low 5%. So, in terms of supply and demand, as an average man you are being outnumbered on the supply side and completely undesired on the demand side. This is what leads to most guys grappling with 1 to 2 matches per day. And that's if they're lucky. There's just no place for them to thrive in this kind of market. Now, some guys might be happy to grind it out and try their luck with their 1 to 2 daily matches. However, this is ignoring perhaps the equally severe problem average guys face, which is the outrageously bad quality. I'm sure most of you watching wouldn't mind 1 to 2 matches if the quality was decent. But unfortunately, the few matches you do get are more often than not overweight, unattractive, single mothers, covered in tattoos, and so on. Basically, women you'd never in a million years approach in real life. And the reason this happens is because too many guys have this mindset of grinding the dating apps out, which, contrary to what you might think, doesn't stem from a place of perseverance and determination. Rather, more so, it's the opposite. Men fueled by low self-esteem and are looking for a sense of redemption and cheap validation. A lot of guys are so fed up with their lack of matches that they believe they have no choice but to lower their standards to rock bottom. And when too many guys think like this, it means unattractive women get flooded with options, which then creates a sense of false entitlement for them. So in turn, they raise their standards, leading that they like fewer guys, which takes us right back to the beginning again with guys getting fed up with their lack of matches and lowering their standards. It's a never-ending downward spiral. So, to wrap up this first point, the problem with lowering your standards as a man is it's only a temporary fix. It's like when politicians lower interest rates to stimulate the economy, which is all good in the short term, but eventually you can't lower interest rates anymore because they're already at 0. Anyway, I hope these first couple minutes has served as a good reminder of how dating apps put average to below average men at the very back of the queue. But for this next point, how about average women? Surely some of the things I just spoke about actually benefit them and put them at the front of the queue. For example, as guys lower their standards, it should allow women to date with abundance and potentially up 2 to 3 points. A huge plus for them. Well, believe it or not, neither of these two things are good for women. And here's why. First of all, having abundance can be as much of a blessing as it is a curse. In the field of psychology, there's a phenomenon known as the paradox of choice, which describes exactly what it says in its name. Having more choice may seem like a great thing, but in reality, it actually stifles your ability to make a decision and leads to immense regret after making your final choice. For example, imagine if you were presented with 30 different flavours of ice cream. It's likely you'll spend a lot longer thinking which one you should get than if you had only been presented with 3. And because of this increased investment into the decision making, it's likely you'll end up picking one that leaves you questioning whether you made the right choice or not. This over-analysis makes you enjoy the final experience less. Or, put simply, as variety increases, opportunity cost also increases. So, back to online dating, as women get presented with hundreds, if not thousands of available matches, analysis paralysis ensues, leading to the women either selecting an option she ends up regretting, or more commonly becoming overwhelmed and rejecting all of them. So, the abundance in online dating isn't exactly a great thing for women. But how about the luxury of dating up 2 to 3 points? Unfortunately, this isn't so great either. When guys lower their standards, a select few may manage to land a dating opportunity with a girl substantially below them, which in the short term may well be highly validating for both parties. The man relieves his dry spell and the woman gets the privilege of dating up by a couple points. However, this is all the calm before the great collapse. Because sooner or later, it could be a few dates or after they've hooked up a couple times, the man realises, what on earth am I doing with this girl? I mean, I'm clearly out of her league and I should be able to date someone way more attractive. So, upon reflecting this, the man soon after vanishes, or ghosts, dumps, dashes, disappears, whichever word you want to use. Therefore, in the aftermath, the woman is now left worse off as she has added another rung onto her notch count, which reduces her ability to pair bond in future. Additionally, she will also have developed unrealistic expectations, because she deludes herself into thinking if she's managed to go on a few dates with a high-value guy, it means she is on his level, but he wasn't mature enough to see things through, and it's his fault for deserting without explanation. But in reality, she never had the chance or value to begin with. And the initial attraction was only facilitated by the stark imbalance of the market created by, you guessed it, online dating apps. So, put simply, the reason dating apps can be just as terrible for women as they are for guys is because the validation it gives them is a complete facade. And it's only when these women get back in the real dating world they realise it only served as a temporary ego boost. Anyway, that's the story for women. For this next point though, how about if you're a guy and stay off the apps entirely? Surely this means you avoid the negative consequences altogether. Well, nope, not even close. Like said at the beginning, these apps affect everyone, including whether you're on the platforms or not. To explain, let's revisit the woman we just talked about who got ghosted by the high-value man as a result of online dating. And let's say she goes through this cycle a few more times, seeing several more guys which all lead to the same outcome of getting ran then ghosted. This repeats until, on one rare instance, she actually learns her lesson. She realises the damage online dating and hookup culture in general is causing her and it isn't worth it. She understands the negative effects it's having on her self-esteem. So at last she takes the necessary action of quitting the apps for good. And now she is back on the market, a changed person for the better. Problem solved. Or so she thinks. Because for the guy she eventually ends up settling down with, who we'll assume is actually on her looks level. When she gets intimate with him, she'll be thinking, this man is nowhere near up to the standard I've been used to. I've had way more attractive guys before when I was on online dating. If only I could have kept them for the long term. Now, her thinking these things impacts herself as she thinks she's getting a raw deal. But it also impacts the man as her mindset has a big toll on the quality of the relationship. And the data is there to prove it too. Listen closely. The risk of divorce increases 6-fold from having a partner with 0 previous partners compared to a partner with 10 or more. The rate of marital satisfaction drops from 2/3 to a little over half when a woman has had a higher number of previous partners. Now, of course, online dating isn't the sole cause of these figures. However, it does facilitate it in many ways that the real world never could or would be able to. For example, the concept of ghosting is actually quite a recent phenomenon that is more or less unique to online dating. Let me explain why. Prior to online dating, the most likely way for a woman to meet a guy would have been through her social circle, like in a college group. And by the very nature of this, ghosting isn't really possible because they're likely going to cross paths many times in future, just like they had been before they started dating. In other words, there's no easy way out for a guy in real life. But online, it's as simple as tapping a button on the screen if a man wants to cut contact. Secondly, even if a guy tries ghosting girls he knows in real life, his act will be exposed very quickly and his name will be in red if he tries dating any more girls in the group. Girls stick together, and they also gossip. So, after the first or second time a man ghosts, word would be spread around that he's just out to lead girls on and dump them after he gets what he wants. Therefore, any woman he tries to date in future will be very wary of dating him as they know what he's done before to another girl in the group. In contrast, today with online dating, there is no such thing as sharing information to know whether a guy is just out there to run his count up. For a woman who meets a guy online, it is a complete gamble as she has no idea of what his intentions are. And as stated in the previous point, it's not just her who has to pay the price, but also you if you're the guy who ends up settling with her. This is why my number one piece of advice for women dating online, besides staying clear of them altogether, is do not spend the night with a man too soon. It's just too big of a risk and scarcely translates into long-term commitments. In fact, by the process of survivorship bias, it's almost guaranteed the vast majority of men on dating apps are just looking for short term. Because as soon as a high value man who actually values commitment goes on a dating app, he's snapped up in a matter of weeks as he finds the right girl he's looking for. Meanwhile, for the guys who just want to plunder and pillage, they never leave the apps, so are always going to be a problem. What's more is these men, more often than not, know the game better than anyone else as they've had the most experience. If they have to fake the promise of commitment to women in order to get what they want, then that's exactly what they'll do, only to vanish once the deed is done. Now, I know this is mainly a channel for men, so you're probably questioning why I've spent the last couple minutes about women. But I'll repeat, as a man, you will pay for all of these issues I just talked about if you're the poor guy who ends up with her long term. Let me make clear. Problems for women all become problems for men eventually in the scope of dating and relationships. Because any emotional baggage she picks up along the way, you'll be the one who has to carry it if you get into a relationship with her. Anyway, as of now, we've established online dating is tragic for men, tragic for women. It's even bad for the guys who aren't even on the apps. This only begs the question, are there any winners? Well, maybe it's the chads. It's the guys who can use the apps like pizza delivery service but for casual flings instead. Surely these guys are happy. It might seem this way on the surface. In fact, there might actually be a lot of men in this position that are very comfortable with their lives. However, for me personally, even if I was a Chad, I wouldn't waste my time with these apps. They're still a net negative in my eyes, and I have 2 reasons to explain. Firstly, even for Chads, dating apps have an abysmally low ROI compared to other approaching methods. For those who don't know, Tinder is heavily based on funneling. 1,000 matches might lead to 300 messages, which might lead to 100 text conversations, which might lead to 20 date arrangements, of which 10 of them actually show up because the other 10 flaked. And of this final 10, 5 of them looked nothing like their pictures, so you already knew it wasn't going to work. And out of the remaining 5, just 1 person led to something and was a girl you actually clicked with. So, after this explanation, you can see just how inefficient of a system it is. Think about the hours of swiping, messaging, let alone showing for the dates themselves. And all the while, this isn't building anything of value in your life. I mean, at least if you try cold approach and get equivalent results, you're developing real face-to-face social skills along the way. But dating apps, on the other hand, are basically like playing mindless video games and develop nothing. Now, if you want to be really time efficient with funneling as a Chad, the only time it makes sense is by sending the same copy-paste messages to everyone. Then you can quickly get through the logistics, so boom, you're face-to-face with a real human being in no time. Or, alternatively, you could outsource all of the swiping and messaging to a personal assistant. Then, all you have to do is show up to the date itself. But, speaking with thousands of guys about their dating experiences, I've only heard 2 people actually do this. The YouTuber Alex Playing with Fire is one of them, and also the YouTuber Hamza too. But obviously, this strategy requires you to have a large amount of financial resources to spare, which just isn't feasible for 95% of guys. So, assuming you're like one of the 95% who has to go through this funnel, the painstaking swiping, messaging, arranging of dates, etc., even if you're high value, I'd say online dating is the worst platform you can use to get your desires satiated. There's just better alternatives that fasten the process and yield higher quality results. Basically, the low ROI of dating apps is similar to the opportunity cost that comes with investing. If you have a large sum of money to invest, it's not just about getting a return after 1 year. It's about having a return that beats the return of other investments. For example, in a situation where you buy into an asset that yields 5% after 1 year, while an alternative could have given you 20%. That's technically a loss because the other investment could have yielded better. So, back to dating, I believe the same thing happens with Chads online. For all the time, energy, flakes and headaches you have to deal with, you have to ask, is it really worth it? And yeah, you might get to ease your desires a couple times, but I'd hardly say it's fulfilling because you've known this girl for what? Like 45 minutes? As a friend of mine puts it, hookups are just a form of enhanced masturbation. This leads nicely into my final point and the second reason why online dating is terrible, even for Chads. They are just unfulfilling, and even more so the increasing number of times you get success from them. I see many high-value men get stuck in the cycle of hooking up from Tinder because it's easy. But then the feeling of this only becomes worse over time. The first 5 feel great, the next 5 are okay, and after that it's kind of mediocre. So, the Chads are chasing the same high they experienced at the start of their journey, but the catch is they'll never reach it because of the diminishing returns of enjoyment. What's more is that as this is going on, a lot of Chads are reluctant to give up these apps because of the ease it gives them. They don't want to deal with the challenges that come with a relationship, the restrictions it imposes on their life, or getting forced into being content with one woman for the rest of their life instead of dozens. And the problem this causes is they end up missing out on the benefits of a long-term relationship, which is where I believe the most and real fulfillment lies. It's almost similar to people living on welfare in developed nations. If they start working, they will immediately see decreased benefits, and in some cases actually earn less money than before being unemployed. So, to avoid this, it's tempting, if not obvious, to stay on welfare. But in the long run, this is a costly choice as it prevents them from ever escaping the welfare trap through climbing the work ladder, earning more money and promotions, which is where the real financial stability is found. So, in essence, a similar thing is happening in dating. When you're already having everything handed to you, it's an easy choice to make zero changes to your life. Chads don't settle down, and instead they get comfortable living a hit-and-run lifestyle, which means they forego long-term relationships. And when they eventually get to the point of settling down, that's if it ever happens, they feel underwhelmed for losing their variety, and they've delayed the process of starting a family by at least 10 years. And as the chart I showed earlier reveals, it will also make the men less satisfied with their marriage as well as the women who did the same. Anyway, that's all the content for today. At this point, you could probably tell I'm staunchly against online dating no matter who you are. If you've enjoyed and think the same, make sure you press the like button on your way out and leave any thoughts you have in the comments below, as it all helps the YouTube algorithm.